All right. Hi, Alex.
Hi, how are you, Emily?
Hi, good. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm in our fields in San Miguel, Oaxaca, so not a horrible place to be.
Yeah, sounds pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, so do you want to tell us a bit about where you're at right now?
So I am standing in the central valleys of the state of Oaxaca in Mexico. More specifically, I'm in a small town called San Miguel within Oaxaca, and this is the home of Banhez Mezcal. So we are a co-op, and this is kind of our headquarters. And I'm standing actually in our garden where we farm agaves, not for the production of mezcal, but for the productions of seeds, which we call semillas.
Amazing. That's great. So today we're going to be talking about how bats and mezcal are related. And if any of you guys have any questions at all, please write them in the comments and we'll get to them either at the end or during the conversation. So just to give you a bit of background about us, I'm Emily Stanford, and I'm from working at a company called BatBnB, and we produce high quality bat houses to help with natural pest control and just to make your garden more rewilded. And today we're joined with Alex, who is our friend from Banhez Mezcal. And do you want to tell us a bit, Alex, about what Banhez does and what your mission is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Emily said, I'm Alex. I'm actually the director of education for Banhez Mezcal. So, my job is to learn as much as I can about mezcal and bring it to the United States. Banhez Mezcal is a cooperative owned mezcal brand, which means that it's owned by the people who make it and the people who grow the agaves that produce it. Part of what we do is we work in a small region of Oaxaca with communities that live in that region. So we represent a very regional mezcal, but primarily we work with what we call agaveros, who are the people who grow the agave. And so we work with them to create sustainable growing methods, which include rewilding your fields, like Emily mentioned, but also making sure that the money coming in is also sustainable for these people to work with. So that's what kind of Banhez is in a nutshell. It's producing mezcal that you guys love to drink, but paying the people who make it and letting them own the brand that they own and that they make.
Fantastic. And that's really important to have it economically sustainable as well as environmentally sustainable. That's great.
Yeah, they absolutely go hand in hand.
Absolutely. So is anyone confused about what mezcal is? And Alex, can you please explain a bit about what it is in case anyone doesn't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So mezcal is technically the oldest spirit in Mexico. Many people consider tequila a part of the mezcal family. What it is it is a roasted agave spirit where we roast the agaves underground, then we ferment them wildly in open air tanks, and then we distill them in very small batches. And so this has been done in Oaxaca for at least 500, 600 years, with some people saying it goes back a couple thousand years into indigenous Mexico. Our producers have been making mezcal in Oaxaca for at least 350 years, with many of the families being able to trace their generations all the way back. Mezcal is really unique because it comes from plants like this. So this is about a 1-year-old, 2-year-old agave. Many of these agaves will take upwards of 7, 8 years to mature, and they'll become as big as I am. But what's unique about agaves is if you look, they're not really a plant that has much for animals to eat. Even when they get really, really big, the sugar source in these agaves is not edible by animals. And so these plants, if were traditionally not used to be eaten. And so they would let these flowers grow really tall, and that's where the bats would come in. But if we want to make mezcal, what we do is we cut these big flowers, and then we let it sit, so all that sugar that would be produced by the flower concentrates. And that's when we go to make mezcal. And that's why bats are so important, because if we cut all of those, we don't get any more agaves. And so we must leave quite a few of these to produce. And so bats are the primary animals that really benefit from agave.
Right. So a lot of people think that birds and bees are the only pollinators, but actually bats are really important pollinators for a lot of species, including the agave.
Yeah, and I see our question, but is it drinkable? So it is drinkable once you roast it. So those sugars that the animals can't consume, by taking this and putting it underground, we actually convert the sugars and then we can ferment it and make it into an alcohol. Mesoamerica, before the kind of distilling products, 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, realized that they could roast these agaves and eat them. So you can eat them, but just out in the wild, you can't.
Right. That's such a cool way to produce a liqueur is by burning it underground. Have you ever produced it yourself?
So I have been lucky enough. I've been with Banhez for a little over 4 years. I actually lived down here for a year and a half. So we call them people who really direct everything, maestros. I would need another 20 years of learning to be considered one. So I've been able to help out, load ovens, but really it's whatever they want to do and some free labor. But yeah, I've been lucky enough to help out on probably 45, 50 productions of mezcal.
Very cool. And can you show us what the flowers look like up close?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can flip my camera around. Yeah, perfect. So we're walking through, and as you can see, many of these agaves don't look the same. So our garden here is specifically designed to produce seeds of these kind of unique agaves. So as we can see, here is a very large stalk erupting out of an agave, and it goes up, 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 and it forms these bright flowers. And so this is called a quiote. And if you can see, I'll get you guys up in there. The flowers are really designed for those the pollinator bats, and they're really fat noses, or they're really long noses, which then get covered in pollen. And so flowers like this are individuals. And what's cool is then these will create seed pods if they're pollinated. And if not, the agaves will actually produce little clones because this is their one chance to reproduce. An agave will shoot this up once in its lifetime. And if you were to leave it like this, instead of the agave remaining healthy and trying to go, what happens is it turns into this. So you can see that quiote was cut to harvest the seeds, but all the agave's energy that it was growing into went into making those flowers. So once we let it go for the bats, that means that we can't use it for mezcal. But if you look at how many flowers up there, one agave left for bats can produce thousands and thousands of agave seeds.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Perfect.
So we have a question. So when you cut the quiote, when is the sugar concentration in the pinot?
Yeah, so there's two kind of harvesting methods for agave. The first one is when you first start to see a quiote grow, it looks like a giant piece of asparagus coming out of the thing. And if you can get it really early on, the agave has built a ton of sugar reservoir to push that thing up. So one way to harvest that is to cut that and then leave it just for like a month or so. And then you can harvest it. The other option is what we call a capon. And so when you cut that quiote like that, you leave it for anywhere between 6 months to a year. And what that does is it allows it to start dying off a bit, but really lose a lot of water and concentrate the sugars. Then what the maestro will do is they'll take a big machete and they'll cut all these things, these pancas, so that they can get down to what we call the piña, or the heart. And so that looks like a giant pineapple once it's cut.
Very cool. And how tall do the agave grow?
So each species can vary in size, and they can vary in years taken. What it's really about, just like most plants and honestly like humans, your environment and how much water you're drinking, right? That's how healthy you feel. But really it is. No, so we're really lucky in our place of Ajutla where we have what's called a darker soil. And so it includes more clay and calcium, and so it holds water a little bit better. So our agaves tend to grow quiotes with more ease. You go up higher in the mountains or out somewhere where it's more dry, it may take a little bit longer and wait for that rain. Agaves are really opportunistic. and they want to shoot up their quiote, or shoot their shot, if you will, when the bats are coming from all the way down from Texas. So the bats in Texas that were living in the caves there started their migration in January, I believe. And so they should just be hitting our region right now. As you can see, it's very cloudy and kind of misty behind me. That's the season of quiotes, and because it's a lot of rain, and it's also the season of bats. So it's my favorite time of year here.
Fantastic. That sounds amazing. Yes, so to answer this question, yes, there are many wild agaves in that region. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in Oaxaca alone, we have over 42 species of agave. There's over 200 in the world. Mexico itself has a history where 27 of the states have a history of producing these spirits with agaves that are endemic to their region. One of my favorite things is that agaves are opportunistic, which means that they can crossbreed, they can do anything they want to survive. And so with that, you may have an agave that scientific name is agave Karwinski. However, from area to area, 15 minutes apart, the common name, such as quiche or quiche, will change. And with it, that agave's some micro-endemic looks will start to change. And because of, and the names will change and the flavors will change. And so while we have 42 to 43 mapped out, the possibilities are honestly endless.
Amazing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So Alex, can you tell us, what would farmers lose if bats were gone? Like, what would happen? Would they hurt economically?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things that it would hurt a lot of people if bats were gone. One is biodiversity. Bats are pollinators, which means that they bring together different species and create unique genetics. And those genetics are usually better resistant against diseases and other pests. When agaves can't cross-pollinate, or there are no bats, what we tend to do is we tend to get lots of clones of agaves. And so what that means is the same genetics planted over and over again. While this isn't bad if you're pulling from different agaves and mixing them up, what we saw up in Jalisco and Tequila was they were just planting fields of the same agaves. And then because there was no cross-pollination by bats, those entire agaves had no pest control, no genetic biodiversity, and we lost 80% of our agave to pests.
Oh, wow.
It made all of our tequila more expensive. It ruined a lot of people's lives down here, and it made us really reconsider. The other thing we would have without bats and this kind of natural population is insect control. And I know this is a huge focus of BatBnB, but it's really, really important here because the bats that come and pollinate agaves don't fly alone. If there's bats that are eating agaves, that means that there's insect-eating bats, there's fruit-eating bats, and bats are a great bioindicator. With the rise of mosquito-spread diseases such as dengue, more and more bats means that we naturally control that. We spray less things into our fields, and we have less spread of disease, and we become more resistant to it. It's a really, really important thing, and it's actually something we've been working on here education-wise, teaching about the different species, tying them into mezcal, but also your natural health. And then the other thing that I think is really important about bats is that culturally, they are so, so, so important to mezcal and the use of agave outside of mezcal. Some of the oldest recorded ideologies of gods in Oaxaca from the Zapotec people are of bats. And it's because of their kind of influence and instruction on how all the plants that were used here and throughout Mexico, and honestly into Arizona and California and Texas. So I think with the loss of bats, something that we're learning more and more is a loss of culture, a loss of connection to culture and connection to our tierra, our land.
Yeah.
And that's everywhere, not just mezcal, but I think in the United States, up where I'm from in Michigan, it's something that we should take seriously on all fronts.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Definitely agreed. Very good answer. Thank you. We have another question from the audience asking, what kind of bugs do bats eat? And I can answer that one if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so bats commonly eat moths, beetles. Some of the common ones they eat are Japanese beetles and cucumber beetles and potato beetles, which are all really massive crop pests in the States. And actually, it's estimated that bats save the U.S. agricultural industry $23 billion every year just by eating crop pests. But different species have different specialties. There's a bat called the pallid bat that lives on the West Coast. They eat scorpions. Yeah, there's a huge variety in addition to mosquitoes.
Yeah, we have some bats even here that, along with mosquitoes and the moths, there are beetles, like you said, and small insects in larvae and pupa that'll infect the agave. And if you get them in there, you can't really use that agave because it's full of holes. And so bats actually help with that as well.
Oh, wow, fantastic. I thought that was very interesting how you said that the cultures kind of admires bats. Would you say that's true, or what is the local people's perceptions of bats?
It's something that has kind of ebbed and flowed over time. So I've talked to some of our older folks, and they understand the importance, but also have somewhat of a fear, because I think that started to creep in the 60s and 70s. Talking to some of the more middle-aged people, they are very focused on that there's one bat and it eats your blood.
Yes.
But to kind of counter that, what we did is most of the maestros and the people who work in agave have a more kind of understanding of their importance. And so we brought in a local professor from Oaxaca to go and work with some of our communities and do classes in Spanish about the different bats and talk to them, because in reality, of the over 80 species of bats here in Oaxaca, only one sucks blood and the rest are beneficial. And so when we could start to explain that and start to show like, hey, there's only one and it lives in the South Coast and it's one of the smallest populations. When you see a bat in your house that's actually eating mosquitoes, that started to click. And then I think it's kind of like how BatBnB has really taken off, right? When people started realizing that these bats do things that we don't want to do, it really started to hit home that it's really important. And so I went up, and we have bat houses in right around 25 communities that are not meant for pollinators. They're just meant for mosquito eaters.
That's fantastic. We have a question from the audience that says, are bats protected in Oaxaca, and are there any organizations that advocate for bats in your area?
In Alaska? Or no, in
no,
Oaxaca?
In your area. Oaxaca, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it is growing. So we have some really, really great ones. Some of them are up in Jalisco, where there's Tequila. And so there's a great organization run by a great bat, Professor Median. And he runs a thing called Bat Agave. And it's really focused on the replanting and moving of species into fields where, instead of forcing farmers to leave agaves that could be made into mezcal or tequila, they give them these agaves and say, hey, this is no cost to you, just put them on your land. We also have a program here in a group called Jaguar Zoo, in Oaxaca, and it's actually it's a jaguar and big cat rescue. And so what they've done is they've actually started to incorporate bats and tours and information about bats and mezcal. And then I think a lot of it is done being grassroots, right? Mezcal brands have realized that they have to take an actual step towards protecting bats. And so we're starting to see more and more mezcal brands join together and work together to protect them. But there's more, I think that there's tons and tons of room for us to grow in Mexico and in the United States. You can never have enough bat protecting organizations.
Definitely agreed. And you guys do a lot for bats too by putting up bat houses in your area. And we also have this exciting new collaboration that we're both doing. Do you want to introduce our Bat House Buildoff program?
Yeah, so this August I will be heading down to Nashville to hang out with the folks from BatBnB, and we're going to be testing drinking mezcal to put up bat houses. It's a very simple concept. I hope people can get behind it, but we're going to partner with 4 bars in Nashville, and essentially over the course of August, if you order a bat-related cocktail from one of these bars, you'll be helping them put up bat houses in an urban garden in Nashville. We're really looking to do this across the nation, but we're excited to kick it off with BatBnB in Nashville. It'll be a really, really fun time. And the end product is the cooperative here sells more mezcal, and we put bat houses in urban farms. So it's a pretty great option.
Yeah, we're very excited about this collaboration. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions about bats, about agave, anything at all? Or I have a quiz question. Can you guess how many species of bats there are in the world?
Ooh, that's a good one. I saw Tuyo was on here. I feel they should know this. And then I also saw that my buddy Justin was on here, and he should know this.
Right. guys are in the spotlight now.
Oh yeah, no, I put them on.
Yeah, good.
It's Price is Right rules, guys.
Oh, we have another question. Is climate change affecting bat populations?
Yes, greatly. This is along with disease. Climate change is probably one of the biggest threats to migratory bats, especially. Here in Oaxaca, I've been working with Banhez for 4 years. Traditionally, the rainy season started a month ago. This is the rainiest it's been in June in 5 years. We need this. The bats don't come here, and they don't get enough food, and they can't come to their safe places if there's no rainy season, if there's no food. And so with the kind of drying up and changing of weather patterns, bats are losing more and more population, and especially cave-dwelling bats, ones that can't depend on BatBnB and people to put up houses that need natural formations. And also our demand for natural resources is really hurting them. When we go and mine mountains, when we go and tear down forests, we are absolutely destroying the economy for agricultural producers, because we're taking away these pollinators' habitats. And so it's really interesting that it's affecting them, but it's also greatly affecting us in ways that we haven't even comprehended yet.
Yeah, this is very true. And like all animals, it's affecting them in many different ways. But I'm originally from Texas, and we just had that giant snowstorm a few months back. And like we got feet and feet of snow, which is I haven't experienced in my whole lifetime. And unfortunately, we saw several dead birds on the ground who hadn't migrated far enough south. And a lot of bat colonies also suffered from the cold. So yeah, it's definitely affecting them in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think there are really great ways that we can all get behind in our neighborhoods. One is look for your local environmental justice group. Something that is really important is air quality for bats. And in Oaxaca, they started one of those about 20 years ago, and now we don't have any mines in Oaxaca. So there's little things of like getting attached to your local place where you can essentially pick and choose how you want to interact with the environment, but be doing good is a great way to just get your toes in, dip your toes in.
Yeah.
See, I knew Tuyo would know it.
Yeah, that's right. So it's over 1,000 species of bats. Can anyone guess even closer? Great. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you want to get involved in bat conservation, a good thing you can do in your own backyard is putting up a bat house, which offers a safe refuge for them. You can also donate to a bat conservation group, like Merlin Tuttle's Bat Conservation is a really good one. And another really important thing you can do that a lot of people don't realize is even just sharing a nice photo or a fact about a bat can really help change people's perceptions. Yes, that's right. That's the right answer. 1,400 species. Well done.
Yeah. Can I throw it out? Is it 1,423?
It's hard to say exactly because, there's new ones like, is this one actually its own species? It's always some wiggle room with that. But yeah, over 1,400. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's just like agaves, right? And I think part of that is bats adapt and change their environment, just like agaves change to the bats in their environment. So you're always going to have new numbers, changing numbers, but what's important is trying to make sure that you know why they're changing, right? If they're changing because we're discovering more, that's good. If they're changing because of climate change, that's bad.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. But what I was saying earlier is if you want to help bats, a good thing you can do is just like share a nice photo of bats, because a lot of people have the perception that bats are vampires and they're evil blood sucking like you're talking about. And just seeing that bats actually aren't these scary monsters, that they're actually quite cute in a lot of ways. Google the Hungarian white bat if you don't think bats are cute.
Bat Butt, isn't it Bat Butt Friday? Every Friday is Bat Butt Friday at Bat World Sanctuary. So you can see some very cute sky puppers, little behinds. And I guarantee it will change your opinion on bats or anybody in your family that thinks they're gross.
Fantastic. All right, is there anything else you want to add, Alex, about Banhez, or is there like any kind of discount you guys might want to offer or anything?
So at the moment I am in Oaxaca, so I cannot offer that. But what I will say is that drinking mezcal that is owned by Oaxacanos is incredibly important. Just like we like to consume things that are made in our local artisan areas, paying artisans well and making sure that you're taking care of the people that make mezcal is how we impact sustainability positively and how we get people to really onboard it. So a fun fact, I think, is our everyday bottle of Espadin Barril, which uses 2 agaves. Currently, we are replanting 5 agaves for every one we harvest. So buying a bottle really puts that in, and we're currently in those fields leaving 20% of the agaves to go to flower. And so you can feel really good about drinking a $35, $40 bottle of mezcal, and knowing that it's, one, paying the people here well, and also helping bats in the long run.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so glad to hear that.
And thank you so much for having me. And again, if anybody has questions about Banhez or the bats at Banhez, you can always reach out to us at our Banhez Instagram, or really easy, my email is just alex@banhezmezcal.com. Yeah, so please reach out. If you have questions, need recipes, or just want to chat bats, I'm always available.
Yeah, same here. Mine's Emily@BatBnB.com. So feel free to reach out on Instagram or email as well if you have any bat questions at all. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day, and thank everybody.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate it. Have a good